Welcome to the Hawkeye Sidekick podcast. And you're very welcome back to the Hawkeye Sidekick Hurling podcast with your host Mark Kennedy, joined again this week by Ruairi Walsh. Ruairi, how are things?
Great, Mark. Yourself?
Great. Many congratulations, Ruairi, on the Clare Under-20 win. We'll also look at the previews of the provincial finals and Joe McDonagh. Munster and Leinster down for decision this weekend. Maybe we start with the Munster Senior Hurling Championship final first. That's scheduled for Sunday at 2 p.m. in SuperValu Park at Kyiv. Eagerly awaited here. We have Cork, reigning champions, in Munster facing Limerick. I suppose get your thoughts on this renewal. Again, it's part 4 of a potential 5-part series here for these two teams. I suppose what's standing out for you heading into this game?
Oh, look, this is building up to be a cracking game again, isn't it? And when these two counties have met recently, apart from, let's say, the blowout last year in the round robin when Limerick, I think, had a 17-point win or whatever it was, other than that, these teams has nothing but a puck of a ball in them if you were to ignore that game. And it's the matchups, really, like it's the questions, who will be putting who, and because the matchups are so important when you're dealing with the likes of Gillan and Brian Hayes at the other end, and even now Buckley as well. Like you have to get the right man marking there and cutting out the threat of the opposition, and I think that's probably what the likes of Ben O'Connor and Kylie Kinnerk and co have been pondering over the last couple of weeks. Is what way will they set up, and who will they who and how will they try and snuff out the opposition? But look, this is going to be a cracking game again. Great stadium below there. It's going to be packed to the rafters. Like, I think Limerick will feel now, like we were saying after the league final, that kind of Cork were the ones that owed a bit of payback, which they did in a cracking game below in the round 1 of the Munster Championship. And now maybe Limerick have that little chip on their shoulder because they lost Munster final last year to Cork up in their own ground, and then they've lost a round robin as well, and they'll be hurting a bit and they'll be wanting to put the record straight. So at the same time, we know Ben O'Connor, it's his first year in. He wants to win everything. Like, he's lost the league final. He'll want the Munster Championship to start. And, for people that are kind of saying, oh, maybe losing a Munster final might, give you a better route through. And, okay, I can see their point. They'll have Offaly, the losing team will have Offaly in a quarter final. People say that losing the Munster final, it might be better off in the long run, but I don't see that. I just think go out and win your trophy. We saw from Kilkenny and Limerick when they were at their highest points, like the shortest route to All-Ireland is win every game. So look, it can be fraught with danger ending up in an extra round of a match. And I know it'll be Offaly. You'd have to think both teams will be comfortable enough there. But at the same time, you're just getting out and there's a risk of injury playing that extra round. So I think both teams will be hell-bent to winning this. As we said, it's a bit of a grudge game. Like, these teams, familiarity does breed contempt. And we have had issues, spilling over recently between them. And but overall, you're just looking for the real talent both sides have, particularly up front, where they're both capable of putting up huge scores and spectacular scores as well. So yeah, really looking forward to this one, and it's going to be a cracking Munster final.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you there, Rory. I mean, Cork's passage to the final has been very impressive, 4 from 4. I think defensively, Rory, what's really stood out for me is their kind of backline performances, and particularly their middle third press. They've only conceded 384 this year, 93 points in total, which has been very impressive given that Kieran Joyce has had his season-ending injury against Limerick particularly. I know we'd voiced in recent weeks that might have been a concern, but I suppose Ben O'Connor coming in, it has been a very impressive campaign for Cork, and I think the backline has kind of stabilised, but again, they're going to face a big test in Limerick this Sunday.
Yeah, look, they are. And I think this is the biggest test they're going to face because even in the first 2 minutes against Clare, there were goal chances that the full back line coughed up. And Limerick will have watched that and kind of they'll be trying to expose one-on-ones inside. And it's getting the right man to mark Gillan. I think we saw him recapture his form against Tipperary after coming back from injury. Against Waterford, he had a bit of a sluggish game, but you could have to say all credit to Waterford as well. Paddy Levy came back and did a fantastic job on him, but at the same time, it was his first game back from injury. He looked way sharper last week, and like, not just him, but if he's an off day, like Shane O'Brien is a real goal threat in there, and Peter Casey is back playing his best stuff as well. So like, the Cork full back line are going to have their hands full. But if they can like limit the damage there, I think the half back line have really steadied this year. Like, there's real strength about them. The two Downies and Mark Coleman, they're love to get forward as well and can take a score. And there's particularly two Downies, big imposing men, very strong in the air. And The likes of Hegarty, Cathal O'Neill are also good in the air, so it's going to be a right tussle to see who wins those long puck outs. So look, it's all set to be a cracker. I'm just wondering, Mark, will that full back line for Cork, with Cahalan kind of being put in there and just did look shaky in those first few minutes when Clare were getting ball in there, are they going to be put under pressure by the Limerick full forward line? And I think that could be maybe the difference in the game. But if Cork can really get to grips with that full forward line and limit the damage, really stepped up from last year, could really put them as absolute All-Ireland contenders if they can do that, because that's what I thought has been their Achilles heel the last 2 years, just coughing up those scores. But as you pointed out, the signs are good. With like what they conceded, like 2 years ago, they conceded 328 against Clare in one game. Indeed. In the Munster Championship, and to have only conceded 387 in 4 games just shows they have definitely tightened things up. And I think it's the half back line, Mark, as well, that's kind of cut off that supply going in there. Then up front as well, just that like freshness with Ruairi Walsh and Buckley coming in there, like they just have really added to the forward line. And just I just think that sometimes you just a team that's kind of gone 2 or 3 times and been disappointed, like particularly with 2 finals, you bring in 2 fresh guys that don't have that let's say kind of a hangover of previous losses, and it just boosts everyone around them. So this is going to be a real titanic tussle below. Yeah, I just think Limerick might have that bit too much for them. I just think so that the Limerick full forward line might do enough damage to win this game.
Yeah, no, look, I think it's very much a 50-50 game. And again, looking at Cork, looking at their statistics, 119 points scored in 4 games. That's averaging about 127 per game. I know Christy O'Connor has always said the 127 is always your sweet spot in terms of in-county hurling. So, and look, to be fair to Cork as well, the distribution of scores have basically been more evenly spread. Last year under Pat Ryan, 992 was scored versus 4 goals and 107 points this year. Also, I've also felt that Tommy O'Connell really has come into his own in midfield, really has been a great foil for his colleagues around him, does Trojan work there. And I suppose Limerick-wise here, coming into the final, going into the Lions' Den here, let's face it here, Rory, it will be a fairly hostile atmosphere for these Limerick players, because, I mean, Cork and Magnificent supporters, it will be probably a 2-1 for Cork to Limerick down there on Sunday afternoon. But, I mean, Limerick stats after losing to Cork in that opening round game, where they were down to 14 players, given the red card to Cian Lynch, has been very impressive. They've only conceded 585 in the 4 games so far, and they've scored 10 goals and 108 points in these 4 games. And I mean, their prerogative is the high shot volumes. And I mean, really seen with Tipperary in the last round, 52 shots. So I suppose John Kiely, Paul Kinnerk, based off the performances, particularly against Waterford and Tipperary, there has been scope for improvement here. So, I mean, who are the key men here, Rory, that you see from Limerick that have to really stand up and deliver for Limerick to reclaim the McMackey Cup on Sunday afternoon?
Yeah, no, I know I've mentioned there Gillan and Hegarty, and and actually Will O'Donoghue was going to have an important game because Shane Barrett was on fire against Clare and kind of led the forward line there with his pace. And Will O'Donoghue likes to sit as a centre back, so I think getting that link right with maybe Darragh O'Donovan coming back and covering a lot of the runs of Shane Barrett and helping out there is going to be important. But if you asked who has younger brigade, the likes of Adam English, Cathal O'Neill, Aidan O'Connor, who have gone on a level this year, Shane O'Brien as well, that they really need to show leadership now as well, and not be just looking at the older lads, to lead the way. They need to, this is their time now. Same, I suppose, with Cork, we have these 2 fearless young lads I mentioned coming in, and as you mentioned, O'Connell as well, Mark Coleman, these guys as well, who have been there for a long time, and the likes of Mark Coleman has, and getting that mix between the younger guys chomping at the bit and that older guys, who have that bit of hurt, I suppose, from not capturing that All-Ireland yet. That should be, enough hunger to drive Cork as well. So, yeah, look, I just think as well, Dara Fitzgibbon, I know, like, is he definitely out? I know the last time they said Rob Downey was out for the Munster Championship, but was back in for the Clare game 2 weeks ago. So you just wonder there, like, is Fitzgibbon going to even feature off the bench? Because I think he'd be a massive boost if he can, because it just means you have another strong forward on the bench that you don't have to start in his absence, So I just think from a Cork point of view, like, if Fitzgibbon isn't playing, and we know Joyce definitely won't be because he had a season-ending injury, but both of them are big losses, like, and I just think against Limerick with a full strength pack to pick from, that like it might be just the difference between winning and losing on Sunday.
Look, Fitzgibbon, we've wished him well, and he's at recovery if he actually features. Fair play to him. But look, they have dual options. Kingston obviously. Ethan Toomey could probably fill in a little bit as well here as well. Rory in that kind of middle third. So look, I think it's fascinatingly poised here. But I do agree with you here, Rory. For Limerick to win, the young prospects of Limerick have to stand up and really make themselves known on Sunday. It's no good depending on the Keane Lynches, the Dan Morrisseys, the Tom Morrisseys, the Aaron Gallans, Kyle Hayeses. It has to come from the core of youth coming through here, likes of the Adam Englishes, Cathal O'Neills, as you say. I think Aidan O'Connor has a huge game to play on Sunday. Again, not just for frees, but also his all-round general play here to really become a bit of a provider for everyone around him, for sure. So I think from that perspective here, Rory, I think Limerick are well set up here. As I said, they probably have a little bit of a revenge mission given what happened in the first round of the Munster Senior Hurling Championship. They also have James Owen to contend with here, Rory. And the discipline factor from Limerick will be a fascinating watch here, just given the fact that Alan Connolly did score an awful lot of frees from close range in that fixture. So it'll be very interesting to see how John Kiley, Paul Kinnerk have set up this Limerick team to be physical, but not to be indisciplined. So I think that'll be a fascinating element to this game.
Yeah, and James Owens will be a factor. Like he has been involved in a lot of incidents kind of where attention gets drawn to it, over the years. And you just wonder, will he, come out with one like there's a lot of kind of talk in the media after the last games, maybe, the usual, the throwing hand passes, and a few people criticising, let's say, Dermot Burns' penalty style of balancing the ball, or if you were saying that, you'd wonder, will he do something like that if there's a 21 or a penalty, that he'll intervene and, cause a bit of controversy, because controversy seems to follow James Owens around. But you're just hoping that like the referee isn't a factor in this, and that, that there isn't a major wrong decision. Because there has been a few in the championship so far. I think, they haven't really decided games, but you're just hoping that it doesn't decide a big game like this. So I'm sure it's something both management are mindful of, and they've been backroom teams and video analysis teams have been kind of watching James Owens' performances and what he's blown for and so on. And they're just hoping for a consistent performance from the referee. So that might be a factor on Sunday. Hopefully it isn't. Hopefully, everything goes smoothly and we don't have that talking point.
Yeah, no, I think the responsibility is on the two set of teams here to really go play hard, play fair though, to be fair. Fairness to James Owens, he got the key decision the last time that these two teams met spot on with Keane Lynch's red card. So, I mean, I think the precedent has been set here for the players. If they're going to do a nice little sneaky off the ball incident, it will be picked up upon and you will be punished if you do transgress. So I suppose with that being said here, Rory, one stat that came out to me fairly clearly from the Cork Echo this afternoon was that in the last 5 runnings of the Munster final, the second place team in the round robin actually won the Munster final, which I thought was a fascinating stat here. So, I mean, I think it's all set up for a fascinating game. Again, yeah, I think you have to kind of go with Cork given the home field advantage, but again, 50-50 here. I think there's not much between them. And I think the worst case scenario for both of these teams, if they go deep into extra time and into a penalty shootout, I know we talk about All-Ireland quarterfinals all we want, but we saw this time last year, Limerick being vanquished and then coming up with a flat performance against Dublin to get eliminated. So, I mean, you don't want history repeating itself for either side here, but stakes are very high. So, look, we wish both teams well. I suppose, Rory, then we can focus in on Saturday at 6 p.m. in Croke Park. Again, a very high incentive here for both Galway and Dublin to get over the line here and to be within 70 minutes of an All-Ireland hurling final. I suppose what's looking forward to you on this game on Saturday?
Yeah, you're looking, Mark, at two teams that have really been on the up this year. We're wondering would Dublin build on their performance last year against Limerick, and they definitely have. Okay, I know they were slow to begin the Leinster Championship, but the way they dispatched Kilkenny the last day, it kind of shows a step up in what Dublin have been at over the previous years. And that was, without certain key players as well. So it shows that depth that Dublin had been lacking. Galway, new team. I know you still have the likes of Cathal Mannion, Pádraig Mannion there, Dahi Burke, but there's a lot of new guys in there, and they are talented and bring pace to the team. And I would say the only thing with Galway is they have a really poor record of all teams against Dublin. And I think I saw a stat there today. I don't know how true it is, but thinking back, I think it is that Galway have not won a game in Croke Park since 2020. So, and they've played 6 times there since. So it's 6 games and 6 defeats for Galway in Croke Park. So look, they need to set that record straight, because you ain't winning All Ireland's if you're not winning Croke Park. So look, that is a big one for them. And I think Galway will really, and Micheál Donoghue, they will really want this Leinster title just to show that they are on the right track. It does kind of avoid them going into a tricky game against Clare in 2 weeks' time as well. So it is, as you mentioned, whatever about winning Munster, I think it's so important to win Leinster to avoid that game against the third place Munster team. So that's a massive factor too if you want to go deep in this championship. And it's all set to be a cracking game now. Like we spoke there about who has the motivation going into the Munster final, I think Galway has to be hurting that bit, because Dublin came to Salt Hill yet again and turned them over. And I know we had Galway down to 14 men for a long period of that second half. But that kind of snatch and grab from Dublin, where the subs bench, we mentioned Ronan Hayes coming off, has added a new dimension, the way he's performing off the bench. And him and Heatherton, like the Twin Towers inside, huge threat in the air. And when players are getting tired, and we've spoken about Brian Hayes' kind of piercing runs, but when there's 10 minutes to go, if you can just launch a ball in there, it's some way to it cuts out a lot of potential mistakes with tired players. Just be able to launch a ball into the edge of the square and have 2 big men in there competing for it. So look, Dublin are definitely they've definitely improved since last year, and if you're asking me, I'd put them as slight favourites for this Leinster final as well.
Look, Dublin's form, I know we'd comment on it a few weeks ago, Rory, was slow to build. I mean, league, we were kind of a little bit underwhelmed. Then they had the 1B final against Clare, where the opening half was a bit of a struggle. They'd come back hard at Clare at the end. And even the opening round fixture in Tullamore against Offaly didn't really set the world alight. But since then, they've started to tally an awful lot of good performances. I think defensively, they've really turned a corner here. But Rory, I think the likes of Liam Rush coming back into the panel has been very astute. Smith back there in the full back line has been playing exceedingly well. And look, they've only conceded 5 goals in 5 games in this league, or in this championship. 5 goals and 106 points, which I think tails a tale of the tip there. That's comparison to 11 goals, 103 points in 2025. So they've really kind of steadied up there. And look, this middle third as well, Rory, I've been hugely impressed by this unit for the last 3 years. And I think I'm delighted to see Donald Burke back to his full form and fitness. Look, he scored 230 so far in the championship so far, and he'll be a key foil for Dublin, particularly on the frees, but also in his open play and movement for Dublin to really set the full forward line alight.
Yeah, look, and having Burke there as well gives you, as I mentioned just before, it gives you that threat out the field as well, whereas if teams pull back to protect the full back line, like, he'll pick off scores from distance. So they have that dual threat of having shooters out the field and having the, that goal threat inside. And I just had, like, Mark, I hadn't realised that they only conceded 5 goals, because, we would associate kind of Dublin with being giving up goal chances and so on over the last couple of years, particularly. So to have tightened up that is a real achievement. And I think even having the likes, I know Owen O'Donnell missed out the last round, but having the likes of him and Rush coming back with that experience can only help the back line. And, John Bellew has had to fill in at times even at 6 and so on. And look, they've had to use different defenders, but it kind of shows that the unit itself is still intact, like, even though they've had to change personnel. Like that is probably that, and now having a bit more of a bench up front, I think, is a real positive for Dublin this year. Galway as well, like, Galway are, they are unpredictable. Like, that's the best way to put it. And they can shoot the lights out, and they could go into this Leinster final and shoot the lights out. Like, you just wouldn't know with them. But we mentioned it before, they have this habit sometimes to fall asleep, particularly in first half of games. They did it against Dublin a couple of years ago in the Leinster final. They did it again against Kildare this year and against Wexford. And I just don't think they'll get away with it on Sunday if that happens again. Like, they're going to have to be tuned in for the whole game. And I know there's a lot of talk, and Munster will get a lot of the hype this week. And I suppose you have the All-Ireland finalists and Munster champions from last year against, a team that has won 4 All-Irelands in a row. So, like, obviously there's going to be a huge focus in the Munster final. But in terms of a real tussle as well, I think the Leinster final is going to be another game that is just so hard to call. Like, and could be in Croke Park with that extra bit of space and the threat both forward lines have, could be an absolute shootout. So really looking forward to it. I just hope a crowd goes. We've had these Leinster finals, Mark, recently with, half empty stands and so on. I saw Buff Egan there had a poll, who are most likely to win in Ireland, Dublin hurlers, Dublin footballers, and it was looking at 85-90% in favour of the Dublin hurlers. So you'd hope the Dublin public feel the same way and go in and pack out the place. And Galway as well, like Galway fans have been poor to follow their hurling team over the last few years. Like you're living up there, Mark. They kind of jump in if they get to an Ireland semi-final or final, but like this is a Leinster final with a young team coming through that have shown real promise. And I really think Galway public, should happen the motorway to Dublin at the weekend and go support this team on Saturday, and even go in early to see what should be a cracking Joe McDonagh final as well.
Oh no, absolutely agree with you, Rory, because this is season defining for both teams here. I think you've rightly called it out here. The loser faces a real tough challenge in a quarterfinal against a rejuvenated Clare, I would say, given the 4 weeks layoff. So I think the stakes are incredibly high for both Galway and Dublin. Remember, these two counties have a history of Leinster final disappointments. It's how either side handle the occasion for me really will be a good parameter in terms of who actually comes out on top. I do agree with you here with Galway. They do have the scoring threat. They've actually scored 158 points in both 2025 and 2026. This year, they scored 9 goals 2025 they scored 9 goals. In 2026, they scored 11 goals on that 158 points tally. I think for me, the worry is the dips in performance, particularly in these opening halves, particularly in Wexford the last round. I know there's a breeze down in Chadwick's Park, but I think the full back line vulnerabilities for me, I'd be very fascinated to see how Micheál O'Donoghue and the management have learned from the Dublin Salt Hill loss experience, because they cannot be giving Dublin 7 and 8 point lead with 15-20 minutes gone. Game's over at that stage. So I think, to me here, Rory, media will probably call it, but I think Dublin probably will be favourites on many quarters here. But you just hope from a Galway perspective, as you say, supporters turning out in their droves here, because this is really season defining. Because if it's Clare in a quarter final, they're up against it a little bit, I feel. So I think this is the be all end all. Hopefully Galway, there is a bit of razzmatazz, there's a bit of hype coming. It had quietened a little bit, Rory, here since the Kilkenny result. And I think that result has to be now taken into perspective given Kilkenny's elimination from the championship. So now Galway supporters need to really support the team when they need the most. And that is now this weekend. As you say, Dublin, I think will have a good following with them, given the way the footballers have been going this season. So I think there's a massive opportunity for Dublin to secure their first Bob O'Keefe triumph in 13 years. So I think the stakes are incredibly high here, and I think there may be high drama here. Again, 50-50 call for me. I'm just going to edge it to Dublin, just purely because of the middle third, and just sensing here that there might be 1 or 2 more goals in Dublin than in Galway. I don't know if you agree with that, Rory.
Yeah, I agree. Again, as I mentioned, anything can happen in this. I'm predicting a real tight game, but you wouldn't be surprised like God would go and shoot the lights out either. But just all form kind of indicates, looks like they have, that strength on the bench, like that have turned games. I know Galway have experience coming in as well with Conor Cooney and so on, and look really sharp there against Wexford. And Tom Monaghan coming off the bench too. Look, it's really a tight one to call. I just think Dublin have had the better record against Galway in recent years as well. And Galway's record in Croke Park, as I mentioned, hasn't been great. So I'm just going to give Dublin a tentative nod in what should be a cracking final. And yeah, it's just so hard to call this one.
I think out of the 2 provincial finals, this one for me has maybe extra time more so than Limerick and Cork in Páirc Uí Chaoimh. I think there might be a decisive winner in that Cork-Limerick Munster final for me. I think this one, the stakes, as I said, are so high here that I think whoever is leading going down the stretch might tighten up a little bit. I might give the opponent a bit of a chance. So I think extra time, but I think Dublin just shading it, because you're looking at O'Donoghue here is having an incredible season. Like Phil Sullivan here, again, backing up his All-Star nomination win last year. Chris Crummy is playing outstanding stuff, and he said likes of Owen O'Donnell here, Liam Rush, guys like that coming to the party. So I think it's the onus is really on Galway to deliver a performance here. And again, it has been patchy, but I think what better opportunity to deliver a performance than in a Leinster hurling final, and to get yourself into the semi-final of an All-Ireland with 70 minutes away from being an All-Ireland. So I think it's going to be an absolutely fascinating game. I suppose before we leave here, Rory, we've been covering the Joe McDonagh for the last month and a half. Again, some intriguing storylines, but we've come with the two best teams in the competition going head-to-head, local next-door neighbours, Carlow and Laois. Suppose get your thoughts on this encounter at the weekend in Croke Park.
Yeah, undoubtedly the two best teams. They met in round one, and Carlow won that game, and won it kind of convincingly enough, which was a surprise at the time. Now, bear in mind, Carlow were playing at a higher league level. They were playing in 1B, and I know Laois had it easy in Division 2A, but maybe playing against a higher level opposition just had Carlow that bit more primed for round one. So I think that's all changed now and will have evened out by now. So anyone's game on Sunday, just looking for, there's some great players in this. You've Aaron Dunphy, who has been shooting the lights out. I think he scored 110 against Westmeath. Put 3-5 pass down. Mar, he became Laois's all-time top scorer during this campaign. I think he 13 points against Antrim.
Yeah.
And then, but these boys, well, have been kind of, you've the likes of Killian Dunn, Tomas Keys, Ben Conroy, they've been scoring heavily as well. Laois look really dangerous up front. And Carlow, they still have the likes of Marty Kavanagh, just war horses, just so reliable. And he's been putting up massive scores, and he is he's still the Carlow attack. But also, Conor Keogh, Rory Murphy, and Chris Nolan, as we know, who's been a real goal threat for Carlow over the years, coming in from wing forward with his power and pace. So, yeah, look, it's going to be a cracking game, and it'll probably be a case of which backline contains the other forward line the best. You've Podge Delaney at centre back for Laois, fine hurler as we know, and Ian Shanahan, a cornerback who's pacey. He'll probably pick up, the main threat from the Carlow forward line inside. And then with Carlow at the back, Kevin McDonagh, outstanding centre back for Carlow. So this is going to be a unbelievable curtain raiser, I think. And yeah, it just makes for a great double bill on Saturday. So having this followed by the Leinster final, and I think it's great that they've split, the days for both finals now. I remember sometimes going to a Munster final and you're rushing, trying to be, start the second half before you see the Leinster final. But putting them on different days, as they've done, the last couple of times, has worked better, I think. And it also gives the Joe McDonagh final its big audience as well. So no more than Laois and Carlow deserve. And I'm kind of leaning towards Laois, Mark, because just when I was involved with Limerick Academy, we came up against Laois teams, and they were always of a very decent standard. And I think we remember they ran the great Offaly minor team there to a real tight Leinster final a few years ago. And you're kind of just waiting for Laois to kind of emerge from the second tier pack for the last few years, and it hasn't really happened for them for whatever reason. But maybe now this is the year where they finally do kind of get out of that Joe McDonagh and build on this for next year then in Leinster, because a county that's kind of that a lot of people were expecting to drive on, but the likes of Kildare, Carlow, they've all even Westmeath have been in Joe McDonagh. Sorry, in Lee McCarthy more recently than Laois have, so which has been a real worry for Laois hurling folk. But I just think the signs are good this year. They recovered very well from that opening round defeat to Carlow, and I just fancy them to get over the line on Sunday.
Yeah, because that opening round game in Dr. Cullen Park, Carlow, the result was 4-17 to 117, but I don't think it told the full story of that game, because Laois didn't miss 2 or 3 gilt-edged opportunities during that game. It was just Carlow were just a little bit more proficient in front of goal here. I think for me, the big talking point for me for Laois is this is their third final in a row in Joe McDonagh. Obviously, they've lost to Offaly very narrowly. Last year was a massive disappointment for Laois. I know they got relegated to 2A. But again, the manner of the performance against Kildare just never really showed their best side of them. So I think for the Laois management here and the players, it's really, can they bounce back? Have they the resilience really to deliver a match-winning performance in Croke Park here? I think that's the mental side of it. That's really the kind of question mark for me from Laois, because undoubtedly they have the players to basically produce a match-winning performance here, and particularly they're the highest scorers in the championship with 13 goals and 125 points this year. I suppose Carlow on the other side were dominant force, particularly that win against Laois set them up magnificently well. Marty Kavanagh's had an absolutely brilliant year, scoring 438 in 4 games, again, was rested against Antrim, obviously, and was top scorer for Carlow in 3 to 4 games. And that's maybe the worry for me as well here, Rory. I'm probably hedging this to Laois as well, just with the all-round scoring contributions, that if Laois can maybe stifle Marty Kavanagh from open play, I think that's really a big way to basically secure a final here. And credit to Laois backs here, given where they were against Carlow, leaking 4 goals. They only leaked 2 goals in the subsequent fixtures in the round robin. So improvements have been made by Laois here. They've really kind of learned and adapted here. I think Laois just about get over the line. But again, this is local derbies here, Rory. I know people in Carlow, particularly Craig Cullen area of Laois, which is bordering Carlow town. There's an awful lot of hype, an awful lot of excitement about this game for the last few weeks. Again, form goes out the window. It's really on the day, and it's which side really handles the occasion. And I think all the hurt from Laois in the last 2 years really comes to the surface here, and they just get over the line and get their spot in Leinster Senior Hurling Championship next year. But that's not to say here, Carlow, they have a goal threat here, and I think Laois have to be on top form to win here. But again, I'm just kind of going to go with Laois. You just have this feeling for them this year, particularly with Tommy Fitzgerald in charge, that right things have been going on here, particularly underage-wise, and also the league promotion again back into 1B. I think that'll be a very key one for them. So, but look, I think, Rory, it's fair to say here, this Joe McDonagh Cup final in years gone by have produced some absolute belters, and I think this one is probably going to be no exception.
Yeah, look, as we said, you've got the 2 best teams coming head-to-head. 2 counties, with, I think it's fair to say, a dislike for each other when it comes to GA and particularly hurling, as you mentioned, that area, kind of South Laois, kind of Northwest Carlow, where basically Laois comes right in there near to Carlow town as well. So look, it's going to make, and this is going again, we're feeding off scraps of what we've seen and what we're reading, Mark, but just have that feeling that Laois might have just enough in the day.
And look, Carlow have motivation as well, considering last year they were a puck of a ball away of getting into a Joe McDonagh Cup final. And they can argue about the extra additional time, but Laois's last-minute goal basically secured the final spot for Laois as well. So there's an awful lot of underlying motivation factors for both teams here to really kind of get over the line, which I think will be very intriguing here. But I think, as well, Carlow did rest a few players against Antrim in the final round, and maybe that comes pivotal. I think I talked about Galway, Dublin, maybe going to extra time. This one and maybe is tailor-made for it as well, because historically there's not a whole pile between these teams. And I think, to be fair to Carlow, if it goes down the stretch, maybe Carlow are the fresher side. But again, I think Laois is imperative here. They can close this game off in the third quarter at all. They have to do that because Carlow will come on strong towards the latter end of the game. I suppose we wish both teams well here, Rory. And we'll definitely review that next week. I suppose we'll finish it there, Rory. Many thanks for your time tonight. It's been a lengthy one. I suppose next week we'll review these provincial finals and Joe McDonagh. And also we'll have a look at the All-Ireland Minor Series as well, because that is approaching the semi-final stage of the All-Ireland phase. So until then, Rory, enjoy the games and have a good weekend, and we'll chat next week.
Cheers, Mark. Take care.
Thank you for listening to this podcast episode. If you liked what you heard in this podcast, why not subscribe to the Hawkeye Sidekick podcast on either Amazon, Spotify, YouTube or Twitter platforms. You can also follow me at Hawkeye Sidekick on Facebook and Twitter for the latest sporting opinions, articles and reports.